Right, we're now in sitting trot, and again we're moving the hands on her back in sync with the two sides of the horse. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. The trot is diagonal pairs of legs with a moment of suspension in between, and so it's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, as opposed to the 1, 2, 3, 4 of the walk. And this again is exactly the same movement as we make when we run on foot. So the back flexes and straightens, like a little spring here in the middle, which is just allowing the back to shorten and lengthen by more or less the same amount the horse's back is going up and down. And this is how we teach a complete beginner to absorb the movement in sitting trot right from day one, so that when they get on a real horse, they already know exactly what to do. It takes all the guesswork out of learning to ride, but it also saves the horse's back an awful lot of discomfort with the rider bouncing around trying to learn to sit to the trot. The most important thing for me when I'm teaching a beginner is to be able to teach them how to stay on. And this will not happen if you tell the rider, sit deeper, relax your lower back, go with the movement, which is what you often hear instructors saying. Even more stupid is follow the movement, because if you're following something, you're behind it. So this way we can teach the rider right from the start to not only be able to absorb the movement, to be able to feel what's going on underneath them as well. So this is sitting trot, and the rider is just totally synchronizing her movement with that of the machine, or in the case of the real horse, the horse. But if I start to push her seat bones together, again you'll see now the machine's moving, how much more movement there is in the whole rider's body and seat. The lower leg starts to flap, the hands, it's much more difficult to keep still. Now as soon as I start to bring her back, she's so much quieter and stiller. And now you would be able to feel, Laura, hopefully, your seat actually separating into two halves and feeling the left side dropping and then rising and the right side dropping and then rising, yeah? Yeah. Good. Okay, we're now going to have a little go at rising trot, which is another thing that is very badly ridden, more often than not because the stirrup bars are too far forward on the saddle. This is probably the worst pace of all in which to pull the rider out of balance and put them behind the movement. So I'm just going to put her up one notch on the machine, and it feels very funny when you're rising to the trot on a machine that's not going anywhere to begin with. But if we just ask you to incline your upper body slightly forward and rising and sitting. Now Laura's rising and sitting very nice and lightly in the saddle. Upper body slightly inclined forward, so her seat bones are pointing backwards. As she lands in the saddle, she's then ready to receive the forward impetus of the horse's movement. But if, for instance, I now pull her lower leg forward, as the saddle will do, the other saddle that we had on originally, immediately she's out of balance and she's having to hoik herself up and down out of the saddle. And what I do with students when they come here on the simulator workshops, I'll get them to put their hand underneath the back of the saddle here. Now I can barely feel Laura's weight coming down on my hand as she lands. She could come perhaps a little lighter still. I can actually control the rate of descent by pushing a little harder against her back here with my hand. Now if I put my hand under the back here, there's hardly any weight coming down in the saddle. If I get her to come too upright and her lower leg forward, ouch, my hand is now being thoroughly squashed. That is what the horse's back feels. Now if I get her to incline the upper body slightly forward again, she's then moving with the machine, sitting nice and lightly in the saddle. Her lower leg stays wrapped around the horse, whereas when it's pulled forward like that, it's much more likely to ping off the horse's sides at each stride. I should get you just back to the correct position again here. Forward, back, as if her seat is on an arc, smoothly rising forward, back, not up and down. If I make you rise too up and down, Laura, you'll see the angle of the knee and the thigh opens here, and again she's coming down much more heavily on the back of the saddle. Another fashionable way of rising to the trot appears to be thrusting the pelvis forward and back, which makes you keep the upper body more upright But you're having to work twice as hard as the horse in order to maintain that. And the whole idea of rising trot was, let's come back to normal, was developed by the British Army several centuries ago in order to relieve the horse's back of weight on long route marches and for the postilions on the carriages as well, so that they're not having to sitting trot for miles on end and their liver ending up mixed up with their kidneys. So it's forward, back, just a floating forward and back of the pelvis, landing as lightly as possible in the saddle. That way the hands stay quiet and still. The rider's seat is truly independent of the reins.